Hello, Gorchops. What you up to today? Well, you know, I was just thinking. You was what? Thinking? It's a bit dangerous, isn't it? Nah, well, you see, I'm a very sophisticated and intellectual orc. And I was thinking, right, how much I ate grots. Oh, I ate grots as well. Who doesn't hate a grot? I ate them so much, snivelling little runts. They are snivelling, yeah, I'd agree with that. And they are also runts, as you quite succinctly put it. Do you know what I should do to a grot if one were to present itself in front of me at this very moment? No, tell me what you'd do. I would rip off its arms, yeah. I would rip off its legs, yeah. I'd bite its nose off. How would it smell? Awful, but that's not a point. I would absolutely destroy the little runt, because I deserve no mercy. I am so angry about grots. I said I'm angry about grots. What's the matter with you? Can you hear that? Hear what? I can't hear nothing. I've got metal ears. I can hear something. What? Like a clankety, rumbly sort of noise of impending doom. Oh yeah. Like a clankety, rumbly noise of impending doom. That is what I said. Yeah, I can hear it. Where's it coming from? I don't know. Oh no. Hello there, Sydney here, and welcome to the Drunken Orc. Right, so, if you don't already know, every month the Warhammer 40k Ork Community hosts a challenge. And this month's challenge for March was to rescue an old model. Now this might be a unit you've had sitting on a shelf for many moons that's never seen any joy. It might be an old kit you've never built up and what have you. It might be an old wrecked vehicle that's of no use to anybody, but to rescue it, give it a new lease of life, bring it to the fore. So that's what I've done. I had an old Chimera kit from the 90s. I used a few bits off it, to be fair. It was, I pulled it apart a bit, but there was, it was recognisable what was left. And I turned it into a Grot Mega Tank. I used lots of lots of bits from my kits, from my bid box, which is getting, severely hit these days. Bane blade parts, Waaagh blaster jet parts, bits off old rhinos, trucks, quite a bit. A lot of plasticard work as well, to be fair, to build up bits. But I try to use as much of the Chimera as I could, even when building the structures on top of the main base. Anyway, it's a Grot Mega Tank. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to fly through the process I used, because I took photos this time. Maybe next time I'll video it, because it is videos after all, isn't it? But I'm going to fly through the pictures, talk over the top of them, show you what's what. I'll try and keep it as brief as possible. I'm going to put a timestamp at the bottom of the screen now. So if you just want to see the finished tank, you can just skip forward to that. Because you might not be interested in how it was done. You might be like, look, I don't want to know how the sausages are made, just show me the sausage. So if you want to see me sausage, it's at that point in the video. Easy now. So right, let's get going. And with the Warhammer Ork Community, if you haven't done it before, it's well worth going along. Join the Facebook group, join the Discord, get involved in the challenges. They're only getting bigger. They're a lot of fun, and if nothing else, at the end of it, you end up with a cracking model you've made yourself, inspired by all your peers, and I think you've got to agree, that means we're all winners at the end of the day. So let's see how I got on and put this together. Yep, nice one. So this is the Chimera. I think it was a Hellhound variant, because it's got the flamer on. As you can see, I've already taken a few of the hatches off. And on the back, I took the back panel off, I think, to use on a mech gun. So the fuel tanks are just standing about where they should be lying down. But though I thought, right, I want to use those tracks, and I always fancied making it into a grot tank, because they always seem to look a bit boaty, hence Grotty McGrot Face. So I wanted to angle the tracks inwards, so it was sort of flared out towards the top. So this was to make the hull. The wider bit is for the top, the narrow bit's for the bottom, and the bits which are drawn on and not yet cut out are just the front and back of the main hull section. There you can see it put together, so that angle in. I wanted it angled in, but I still wanted the tracks to be able to, you know, touch the ground. And I didn't want it to fall over, so it's not massively angled, but it's enough to show, you know, give it a ship-like feel. That's the start of the turrets. So with some black plastic pipe there, it was actually taken off the handle of a plastic battle axe that belongs to my son. He's not noticed yet, but he's only got a hatchet now. I cut about 8 inches off or so, something like that, and then just trimmed it to the turret sizes. There's also just plasticard on the top. All I do to get those plasticard circles is glue a pretty irregular shape of plasticard to the top of the pipe, and then just go around it with a pair of nail clippers and just trim all the little pieces off till it's circular. As I've said many times before, if it's orc stuff, you get away with murder. If it was the starties, they'd be going, "Oh, this circle is not proper, super duper smooth. It's all got bits hanging off it and whatnot." But orcs aren't like that. It's absolutely fine for that. Then I glued those there. You can see the hatches there are resin. They're part of Geargut's kits. It came with these grot tanks, as did the tiny wee turrets, which I used one of those on top of one of the big black turrets. And it's just a bit of plastic rod, which you can see is a hinge. Well, if you can see that, just stuck behind the hatch. And in the background there, you'll see the start of the hull. There we go. It's from a different angle. You can see there's a plastic support up in the front, going vertical, and then that curved prow section was just some, I think it was 1/2 mil card, and glued it. A lot of glue, to be fair, across both edges, the top and the front, and then just held it in place whilst it's set, curved as it is, and then just fixed it up with some putty just to smooth it out. And I put a few supports along 5 aside just to support the actual deck, and drilled some holes in for those fence posts. But other than that, it's just a little plastic tray. The deck itself, which you can see better here, is a checker plate, and it's just, you know, it's what you have, isn't it? It looks like it. I don't know if you have an actual ships or not. I'm sure you do. It gives you a bit of grip in the high seas, or, you know, 40k battlefields. But anyway, I want to use that for the deck. Cut the front out like a prow, and it widens out for the walkways down the side. At this point, I was thinking, yeah, this looks a bit rubbish, but, you know, as always, plough on, see what comes. There's some more work on the turrets. You can see I've started putting the box on the back. The grot tank, the upper structure was basically boxes. Boxes, armour plated with bits stuck on. So that was the first main piece. You can see in those turrets at the front there, I've stuck the super shooters on, and the sights were just the barrels of heavy flamers pilfered from the Bane blade. You can see the starter ladders on the side as well. In the end, I took those ladders off and put them on the main structure as opposed to having them on the turrets. And there's just a few bits scattered about there I was thinking about using, some of which made it in, some of which didn't. What we've got here, that's pretty much the finished turrets, or close to the finished turrets. Last cannon off the Bane blade on the far left. Super shooter, there's another super shooter at the back. The one with the grot commander sticking out, actually it's just a grot sticking out the hatch. Again, one of Gearguts' grots, Bane blade hatch, and a big shooter. And that one far right has got a little turret on top, but the main guns are just big shooters from the Dagger Jet kit, stuck onto, I think it's part of the custom Mega Blaster from the Dagger Jet kit, although not the main barrel, just part of the gun. I just use those as like housings for the shooters, and there's a dreadnought visor in there. The way of seeing out with that turret. There we go, test fit with the turrets. See, it's slightly different at the end because I've still got the ladders on the main turret, on the turret's end, not the main hull, and I've got the 2 big shutters at the top there that didn't end up there due to the fact that when the hatch was open, they wouldn't be able to turn. There we go, that's from the front. I kept checking the front profile because I wanted to make sure it kept it nice and narrow. I didn't want a great big wide thing from the front. It was as big as it wanted from the side, but front on, I wanted to keep it quite a narrow profile. So here I've started to build up the main hull itself, the main superstructure. I've put an extra box on top. This has got the armour plating on, just more plasticard and rivets. Cut a bit of the checker plate Again, if you just slightly score it, you can bend it around the corner. And you can see I moved the ladder as well. The ladder's off the turret at this point, and it's next to those vents off the main blade. So it's just the 2 polystyrene rods, 2 plastic rods, about half, are they a mil thick, I think, actually a mil? No, 2 mil thick rods, and then just offcuts of plasticard stuck on. And then for the rivets on that, because the rivets will be so small, I just get the tube of plastic putty. It's like a liquid putty, and literally just dab 2 on each slat just to make the rivets. So here's the other side. As you can see, just more armour plating. Occasionally I'll leave a rivet off, which you can see on the top, and just drug a little hole in instead, just to show where the rivet's fallen out, and nobody can be bothered to stick another one in. On the bottom, another ladder, more armour plates, some corrugated sheeting, some checker plate again, and if you see anything orange, it's basically off the original Chimera kit, and that is a hatch to the winch house, because I wanted to put a ramp on it as well. You can also see the holes I drilled for the railing posts. I've stuck the little plastic rod in, and then just glued some thin Judas chain around the outside of the deck. You know, safety first and all that. There's a gap in the middle there because that's where the boarding ramp's going to be. There we go, that's with the boarding ramp up and in position. Getting that chain to go from round the boarding ramp, which is just, you know, looped round and glued in place, through the little window of the winch house, and then have it pulled tight whilst, you know, the glue and the actual ramp itself was setting. What a pain in the arse all that was. I couldn't get it. You ever tried coating a bit of chain in super glue and then threading it through a hole without actually touching any of the sides because it will immediately bond with it? Pain in the arse. But yeah, there we go. Boarding. You can have a boarding ramp if you're a ship, haven't you? I mean, I don't know what Grots are going to use it for. Well, probably boarding the ship. Again, another test fit with the turrets. At this point, see, I've swapped the 2 top turrets round and got the one with all the shooters on in the middle, and then the one with the observer right at the very top. So everything's still looking a bit slimlined. But I need to start building the back up. So this is just a test fit. It's not glued in place yet. As you can see, it's got a bit of a gape at the top. But this was the start of the back and higher part of the tank. Held in place there, extra plating from a Bane blade. That's that big grey slab there at the back. And that's the other side. It's another slab from the Bane blade. Although I cut the little nodules off on that one. And you can also see I fitted a big iron shod wheel at the back. A lot of the tanks in World War One, which, you know, the Land Raiders and Chimeras and what have you were based on, had these stability wheels at the back. No idea why. There's nothing more stable than a 5-ton tank, to be fair. And even if it takes off at 4 miles an hour, it's not going to pop a wheelie, is it? But anyway, it's got I put the wheel on because they had it, and it's kind of a stability wheel, helps with steering, like a rudder, boats. You know, I had some knocking about. That's all I really need to say, I suppose. You don't need any more excuse than that, do you? Yeah, we'll go. There's more orange bits from the Chimera. Bit on the left, untouched. Bit on the right, touched. It was just one piece. I think it's the base, but I cut it in half. And as you can see from the orange piece in the centre, I cut the ends off left and right and cut a section out of the middle. And that grey piece to the right, I believe, is off the Bane blade as well. Didn't use it, so I thought, right, it's going on this. And that's where it went. I took a few steps here without actually taking any photos, because I do that at times. I get carried away. This latest bit goes behind the armoured turret I'd built previously on top of the Bane blade plates. That's quite difficult to say. And I started sticking some exhausts on, and the exhausts there from the Dakar jet just fit perfectly onto the pipes that were on that Bane blade piece on the back. I had to build out a section there to accommodate the fans, so I didn't want a fan on the back which then looked like it was just overhanging or, had nothing behind it. And the orange panel there's essentially a plank which goes through the centre of it to the other orange panel, and then that little turret there, which is sticking out the side, is just one turret sliced in half, and then just had the 2 halves sticking out, one left, one right, and there's a little hole drilled in so I can mount whatever gun I want on, although I hadn't decided at this point. And on top of that, I put another little box, and you can see it's just an armoured box. It was just to give the top platform a little bit of height. The platform itself is essentially a tray. It's a tray with, I make the little tray out of plasticard, cut a base, cut 4 sides, stick them on. I then fill out the interior with some checker plate on the floor, and I used corrugated plasticard to do the inside of the little walls, and then the outside I just stuck the dags on, cut little triangles. I tend to cut the bottom corners off so it's slightly rounded at the bottom, like more like a teardrop, and then I'll go around them with either a file or a knife, or sometimes just a sanding disc on a rotary tool, just to rough up the edges and make them a little bit more uneven. Then stick them on, clap some rivets on, and then around the bottom add truly little offcuts of plasticard of different types, plain, corrugated and what have you, just to fill those gaps in, just to bulk it out a little. You can also see there's a ladder going up on the left, which goes up from the bottom platform all the way up, and there's little hatches cut out of that tray as well. Yeah, I shouldn't call it a tray, a platform. And top of a chimney pot for the big exhaust for the engines. It's basically, I think it's a demolisher cannon off a Baneblade, but it's my chimney pot. There we go, there's the other side. As you can see, I didn't do a big ladder, I done a medium sized ladder, and I've done some steps which go from the end of the platform up to the ladder itself. Just drilled some holes in, plastic rod in, and then glued the steps straight on. I wanted to have a walkway around midway, but it was just going to be too difficult with the back plate, which had all the detail on with the pipes and fans and what have you, and also the fact that at this point I decided to put scorchers on the side sponsons, if you like, and they would have made it difficult for people to walk around. So I sacked off the walkway idea and just left the steps and the ladder. Also stuck a larger exhaust section on from the Dagger Jet, which comes out and goes all the way up. There we go, got a scorcher fitted from the Def Dread kit, and there's a scorcher on the other side as well. Now on this one I've started scattering some grots around it, because I started thinking I'm going to have to put some grots on here. I think I'll do 3 or 4. I'll do one in the turret and another 3 to act as crew. Yeah, that's what I'll do. So this was just sort of test fitting the grots. Don't even think the blue tacked in place. I think they just stood there. And you can also notice on this one, as well as the last one, there's a little commissar who I originally had sort of in a crucified position with his arms out by his sides and his feet pointed down. And he was going to be strapped at some part to the front of the Battle Fortress I'm making, the Baneblade Battle Fortress, but in the end I decided not to use him. I thought it's too grotesque. I'm not doing that. No, not my orcs. But then I do a Grot tank, yeah, they're going to do it. Vicious little bastards. So I've got to reposition his arms, so he was actually held back. I was going to put a chain around his neck. He's got ones around each wrist and he's got one around his ankles. I was going to put it around his neck as well, but it was very, very fiddly, and it would have looked just daft, in my opinion, this chain sort of like looped around his neck, because it would have been on top of his chin as opposed to, you know, actually around his neck itself. But yeah, I thought I'd stick him on the front. You've got to have a figurehead on any ship, haven't you, really? Here we are then. So at this point I've started painting it. I'll give it a primer of black, just a matte black. I use a high coat. It's actually a car spray. It's really good. The coverage is fantastic. It's like a 1 pass and it's done. You pay about £5 something, £5 some change from Amazon for a 400ml tin. So it's a decent sized tin. It's a big old tin. I just picked up 4 cans for £4 odd from there. You know, savings with a bulk buy. I swear by it. I've been using it before I got back into Warhammer, and it's me go-to primer. So I'll give it a prime, and that's actually also had I suppose not a dry brush, a wet brush, because I used Vallejo's gunmetal, which is I've just got some of that, and it's really nice, but it's wet as fuck, and you can't dry brush with it. I think it's airbrush colour, but you can paint it on no problem. It does actually cover pretty well, but I dry brush with it. It was more like a wet brush, but just as I'm putting down base metals, that doesn't matter. Once I'd got those colours down, I then started dirtying it up. So first of all, I'll give it a full coat with it's Gilliman's Gilly flesh, man flesh. If you paint it on top of the metallics, it just makes it look a little bit dirty. Dirty old metals going on there. And then once you've got that dirtiness, you can start really hacking it up. So I generally give it a slight, a proper dry brush with Mournfang Brown and Riser Rust. And that just, for me, the Mournfang Brown is your dry rust, beg your pardon, is your wet rust, and your riser rust is your dry rust. More moon fang towards the bottom of the model, more riser towards the top. Once I've done that, I'll get me known oil out, because, you know, it's nice to find a use for it, and typhus corrosion, and just start painting on dribbles and pools, and, you know, in the cracks, and, you know, just go to town, really. You notice a little tank in the bottom left hand corner. That's one of me normal grot tanks, and I had a couple of those out just to help us get the colour right. I wanted to have like quite a uniform colour to them across all my grot tanks, really. So that's what that was doing out. Like you see, it's starting to look a little bit more, you know, like it's just been abandoned, and, well, you know, looked after by grots, basically. And the back as well, because you're probably wondering, but what about the back? What about the back? Well, there's the back, all right. Don't worry, we got there. See? Lovely. Back. Now, at this point, I started putting some colours on it. With my grot tanks, I just rust them up, as I showed before, and then I'll just add a few coloured armour plates, generally sticking with the primary colours, red, blue and yellow. And I've done likewise with the Mega Tank. As you can see, you know, you can see red bits, you can see blue bits, you can see yellow bits on both sides. Fantastic. And once I'd put them on, I started dirtying them up. Now at this point, I had to get my crew done. So here's the first little grot. As you can see, I've cut his foot off. The reason I cut his foot off, because that is just a standard box of grots. He's standing there quite static, and whilst on Discord somebody suggested having a grot running on the track like a treadmill, and I thought that's a pretty good idea. I like that. Bit of a challenge, because none of those grots are running, so that's the one I decided to work with. So I cut his foot off first of all. You see, I've drilled a little hole through the top of his foot, and there's also one going into his leg. Now that's only because you're cutting off such a small surface area and repositioning it. I wanted it to be strong enough. I didn't want to knock it and snap it off, so that's what the hole's for. I then cut his trouser leg to increase the angle, so when that was flat, connected back to the foot, he'd be leaning forward with his trailing foot off the ground. So you can see that here when I've put the foot back on. His trailing foot there is lifted in the air, but it does look stupid because it is like some sort of weird curly, you know, them stilts things that people wear. So it's just a weird old foot. So I just cut his foot and carved it into the approximation of a foot. It's very, very clunky. I'm not a whittler, but I just had to cut his toes off and cut it into something a bit more foot-like. Because he's going to be running on the tracks, he's going to be muddy. His feet are going to be covered in clots, so I didn't feel a need to, you know, carve in toenails or anything like that. Just a rough approximation of a foot. And there he is on the blue tack blob, because he's on a pin, of course, all fully painted up along with 3 of his mates. I basically ended up not doing 3 grots. There's 10 grots on it in the end, because I just kept adding them and adding them. So they're actually the last 4 I did. They're the middle 3. There you go. I tell you what, apart from Macari and Nickit, and maybe 2, possibly 3 grots I've painted for tanks and what have you. I'd not painted grots. These were the first actual proper grot models I painted, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think they're really, really good. They're all basic, you know, just straight up out the box, apart from the fella running and the commander. That's him on the left. Because with him, I repositioned his sword arm, just so it's pointing forward a little bit and just straight up in the air. And also I've given him a hat. I've given him a commissar hat, because obviously there's a commissar lashed to the front of the thing. So, you know, he's took his lucky hat. This fella's probably seen how many guardsmen that commissar's killed and thought, champion, I'll have his hat. I'll be as good as him. And there's the finished tank. Everything put together. Grotty McGrot Face, Mega Tank, Rescue Project, Scourge of the Battlefield, done. I'm pretty pleased with it, if I'm being totally honest with you. The grots had so much just sticking them all over. There's about 3 up in the top platform, 1 in the turret there. There's I think 3 on that side, including the one running on the tracks. And there's 1 at the very front with the pistols to stand on the little last kind of turret. And then there's 2 on the other side, which you'll be able to see in this photo. There we go. So yeah, I mean, you see he's got the Grot Revolution symbol up on the star on the top turret. You see that I've dirtied up the yellow and for that matter the red and the blue, just with washers. Just washers, using them almost like a glaze, I suppose, you know, building them up. And any little holes I've drilled in, just get a little bit of dribble coming out. I did add a little bit of silver, just slightly, not so much an all over dry brush, just picked out little bits where I wanted the bare metal to have poked through even the rust. It just adds a little bit of texture to it, you know, a little bit of detail. A little bit of checker plate. I mean, I'll be honest with you, this has got very little checker plate on it. Compared to what I normally do, but I just couldn't find the plates to do it. I even left one plate there. If you see the star on the turret, below that was the dags, and below that there's an armour plate, which is just a plain metal plate. I just liked it. I just liked the colour on it. It wasn't too obvious. It wasn't standing out a lot. I just liked it being plain metal. I couldn't bring myself to checker it up or hazard stripes or anything like that. And we've got the front profile, again, still quite narrow, which is what I wanted. It does flare out at the top with that platform, which is good. If I could do it all again, I would have liked to have had the scorchers, a little, you know, the sponsons just coming out a bit. Maybe it's extended the width of that section, but it's not an issue. It's just, you know, and it would have played merry hell with the ladders and the steps and what have you, so maybe it was for the best. But yeah, I'm pleased with the profile. And of course, you all want to have a look at the back. The only other bit of checker plate, 6 checks. It's possibly the smallest bit. I think I've put more checks on choppers than I have on that plate there. But what are you going to do, eh? There's just a bit from the front. You see the clenched fist of Defiance there, painted on the side of the turret. You can see the Grot Commander and his little commissar cap. He's got a few marrows up there with him. There's the poor bastard who took a lot of the scrap off. The commissar, they witnessed taking out Imperial Guardsmen like it was nobody's business. He's got him, bit of a lucky charm. After we've taken the tanks, we'll lash him to the front. And we'll steal his power and his hat. So he's just been muddied up a bit. He's not being ill-treated. Yeah, he's a little bit battered and bruised. I painted him up, you know, perfectly normally. And by that I just mean as if he was going to be an Imperial Guard army. And once he was finished, I then went back with some purple contrast paint and built up some bruises on his face, gave him a black eye, you know, duffed in cheeks and all that sort of stuff. And then went round with some brown and blood for the Blood God, just to add some blood. I don't want to see people drenched. I think it always looks a little bit over the top, unless you're doing like something cornate, I suppose. Just a little bit, you know, trickling out the side of his mouth. From around his hairline. He's got a busty eardrum, a little bit on his wrist, you know, it's coming out from under his coat sleeves and what have you, and then the brown's just for the dry blood. It's possibly it's not particularly gruesome, but it's possibly the most gruesome thing I've painted. You know, since I used to put PVA on choppers and paint it red for gore. That was a long time ago. I've grown up a lot since then. There you go, a close-up shot of the right hand side of the hull there. So you've just got a couple of grots scampering about. One of them like literally on the tracks. He's just about to go over the edge and he's trying to find a way up. He's picked the wrong side really, because the ramp's on the other one. But there's one at the front there with his little blaster. You see the steps going up to the ladder and what have you. And that's the other side with the boarding ramp. Again, a couple of grots knocking about. So yeah. There you go then, Grotty McGrot Face. That's my Grot Mega Tank, and there it is. Meets all the specifications for a Mega Tank. Ruler here, yes. He is 6.5 inches long, correct. He is 3 inches wide, correct, and he is 6 inches tall. A little bit off, about 5 3/4 inches tall. I think 5's meant to be the height, but you know, it's only because the lid's up on the turret. Anyway, Grotty McGrot Face. And to be fair, I've wanted to do this since I got back into the hobby early 2020. I had the parts, the Chimera, 15-month, nothing. 40k Ork Community group on Discord, has a monthly challenge, rescue an old vehicle project. Boom, I'm on it. This was how far I was by about I think it was the 3rd or 4th of March. There we go. That's what I managed to put together. That's my plan. That's my blueprint. Not very far on, really, was I? Less than 2 weeks later, done. Job's a good one. So, you know, it's worth doing. If nothing that, I feel like a winner. I feel like a winner already because I've got something done. That's always nice. So I'm sorry the video's so long. I tried to keep it a bit shorter, but I failed. So you know what you're gonna do. Yeah, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and all that YouTube nonsense. And thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care now. Bye bye.